Ever been to a wedding and kind of secretly wondered if they'll actually make it?
Oh, yeah, I think we've all been there.
Makes you think, right?
Totally. Like, does the whole ring thing really mean a relationship is going to succeed?
Or could a couple that's never done the whole wedding thing actually have something even stronger?
Ooh, good question.
That's what we're diving into today.
Love it. Lay it on me.
So there's this proposed podcast script we found, and it's all about this debate, cohabitation versus marriage.
Susie.
It's got opinions from experts, real couples telling their stories.
Oh, so we get the whole picture.
A whole shebang.
All right, I'm ready. What's this script really about?
What I think is so cool about this script is it doesn't just scratch the surface.
Uh-huh, so it gets into the nitty-gritty.
It does, like how different cultures see living together before marriage.
Yeah, that could be a big deal.
And all the legal stuff some couples have to deal with.
Right, because it's not always straightforward.
Plus, it even talks about how the law is changing to recognize relationships that aren't your typical marriage.
Fascinating. It sounds like we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do. By the end of this, you'll be able to hold your own in any marriage versus living together debate.
Uh-huh, bring it on.
And you might even start to question some of your own ideas about relationships.
Ooh, I like where this is going. So where do we start?
Ready to jump in?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's tackle that big, often loaded word, commitment.
Yeah, what does it really mean? Does having that marriage license automatically mean you're more committed?
Right. So this script starts off by bringing in a marriage therapist. And they remind us that, sure, marriage has always been seen as the best thing.
The gold standard, so to speak.
Exactly. But
There's always a but.
commitment isn't just about signing a piece of paper. It's about showing up every single day and making choices that put your partner first.
It's about building a life together.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But this script gets us to think beyond those perfect wedding pictures, doesn't it?
It does. It asks us to look at the relationships we've seen in our own lives. Think about it. Have the married couples, always been the strongest ones?
You've got a point. I've seen some unmarried couples who are rock solid.
Right. And sometimes those non-traditional couples are the ones that last the longest.
Makes you wonder what their secret is.
I know. Now, the script brings in a relationship coach who works with all kinds of couples, married and those living together.
Gotcha. So they've got a broad perspective.
They do, and they raise a really interesting point.
Okay, I'm listening.
Some couples choose not to get married on purpose. It just doesn't fit with their values or how they see commitment.
Interesting. So for them, it's not about the label.
Not at all. They find meaning in their everyday lives, supporting each other, building that life together.
That makes sense. But I can also see how not having that official recognition could be tough for some people.
Absolutely. The script talks about that too, especially in certain cultures. Not being married can make people feel insecure.
Like maybe they question if their relationship is seen as serious by others.
Or even worry deep down if their partner is really in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I could see how that would happen.
And here's where things get really interesting, and I bet this will resonate with some of you out there.
Okay, hit me with it.
The script talks about couples where one person is dying to get married,
And the other one.
and the other just doesn't see the point.
Oh, that's a recipe for trouble.
Yeah.
How do you even deal with that?
It's a tough one. The script really emphasizes that couples need to be honest with each other about what they want.
Because if you ignore those differences, someone's going to end up resentful.
Exactly. It's all about finding a compromise that works for both of them. Maybe they redefine what commitment means to them.
Or maybe they realize they're not as compatible as they thought.
It's tough, but those conversations are so important.
For sure. So we've talked about the emotional side of things, but what about the practical stuff? The legal and financial stuff.
That's where it gets real. Because love doesn't always solve everything.
Especially when it comes to things like inheritance or even medical decisions.
Yeah, no one wants to think about that.
Right. But the script brings in a family law expert, and it made me realize.
What's that?
Imagine you're in a medical emergency, and your partner, the one who knows you best,
Yeah.
they can't make decisions for you because legally they don't have the power.
Oh, wow. That's a scary thought.
It is. And it's something we don't usually consider when we're all lovey-dovey. But those legal protections can become so important.
It's like those legal benefits aren't just theoretical. They're real life stuff that matters.
Exactly. Like the script talked about inheritance laws.
Yeah.
Did you know that sometimes if you're not legally married,
Uh-huh.
you might not get the same inheritance as a married spouse would?
Whoa, that's a huge deal.
It is, especially when it comes to things like owning property or even getting access to your partner's pension if they pass away.
It makes you think. So we've heard from the experts, but what about real couples who've gone through this?
Ooh, I'm all ears for that.
Well, the script interviewed two couples.
Okay, so different perspectives.
One couple has been living together for like over 10 years.
Okay, and the other?
The other couple decided to get married after being together for 6 years.
Got it. So we get both sides of the story.
Exactly. And sometimes hearing about people's real experiences is even more powerful than what the experts say.
Totally. What did the first couple have to say?
So the couple that's been living together for 10 years, they said that getting married didn't really change their relationship all that much.
Interesting. They already felt committed.
Deeply committed. And their day-to-day life stayed pretty much the same.
So what did change for them?
What did change was their sense of security, especially when it came to the legal and financial stuff.
Makes sense. Like they finally had that peace of mind.
Right. Like, especially as they started thinking about long-term things like buying a house or maybe even starting a family.
It's like marriage gave them this extra layer of stability on top of what they already had.
Exactly. For them, those legal benefits were a big reason they finally decided to tie the knot.
Interesting. So what about the second couple? The ones who waited a bit before getting married?
Well, for them, getting married felt more like they were taking their commitment to a whole new level.
Even though they were already really close?
Super close. But they talked about how saying those vows in front of everyone, it gave their relationship this new sense of weight and meaning.
It's like it was this big public declaration, like a ritual that solidified everything.
Totally. It was their way of honoring their journey together and, like, really solidifying their plans for the future.
I love that. You know, both these couples' stories really highlight something important.
What's that?
There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to this whole cohabitation versus marriage thing.
I agree. It all comes down to what each couple values and what feels right for them, their personal circumstances.
Exactly. What struck you the most about their experiences?
What struck me is how both couples ended up feeling more secure and committed.
Even though they took different paths to get there.
Exactly. And it seems like what really mattered, whether they were married or not, was that deep connection they had.
Like they really understood each other
Yeah.
and wanted the same things for their future.
And that's where the script goes in a really interesting direction.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It asks us to think about how these ideas about commitment and stability, how they apply to other parts of our lives, not just romantic relationships.
Oh, that's interesting. Like what?
Well, think about it. What about our friendships?
Good point.
Or those business partnerships where you really have to rely on each other?
Or even just sticking to our own personal goals.
Exactly. Don't those things require commitment too?
They totally do. Like,
Mhm.
think about those friends you're so close to. You consider them family, even though there's no official bond.
Right. Or a business partnership where the trust and shared vision are just as strong as any marriage.
You're right. Those relationships need commitment to work.
And sometimes, it's just like with the whole marriage versus living together thing, those commitments mean making tough choices.
Like, do you stay in a friendship that's not really working anymore?
Or do you walk away and make space for something healthier?
Right. Or in business, do you stick with a partner who doesn't share your vision?
Or do you take a leap and go your separate ways?
It's so true. It
Mm.
seems like those core principles of commitment, they apply no matter what kind of relationship we're talking about.
Shared values, respect for each other, and being willing to put in the effort, those are important everywhere.
So true. Okay, so we've heard from the experts. We've heard from real couples.
We've really explored the different sides of this whole thing.
What's the takeaway for our listener who's been thinking about all this?
Well, I think what's important to remember is that while marriage definitely has those legal and societal advantages,
Yeah, it's seen as the official way to do things.
exactly, but you can have a deep and lasting commitment without it.
It really comes down to the quality of the connection you have with your partner.
Those shared values and the effort you both put in, that's what matters.
It's not about judging anyone's choices. It's about understanding there are lots of ways to build a strong and fulfilling relationship.
And figuring out what works best for you and your partner.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh.
But, reading this script really got me thinking about something else.
Oh, what's that?
This whole conversation about commitment in romantic relationships,
Yeah.
it made me wonder, are we as thoughtful about commitment in other areas of our lives?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, are we as dedicated to our friendships as we are to our romantic partners?
Good question.
Do we expect the same level of trust and accountability from our business partners as we do from our spouses?
It's like this deep dive has opened up a whole new conversation about how we think about commitment in general.
Not just in romantic relationships, but in every part of our lives.
Because, just like with the whole marriage and living together debate, there's no one right answer.
It's about consciously choosing to invest in the relationships that matter most to us.
And being clear about what we expect from those commitments.
And being willing to have those tough conversations about what we need and what our boundaries are.
It's like this deep dive has given us permission to really look at all our commitments and decide if they're still working for us.
To redefine what commitment means to us and build relationships that reflect our values, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or a colleague.
Because, let's face it, life is messy and relationships are complicated.
There are going to be bumps in the road, misunderstandings, and times when we question if we made the right choices.
But that's all part of it. What matters is facing those challenges honestly and working through them together with empathy.
That's how we grow and learn.
So whether you're trying to figure out a romantic relationship
A tricky friendship?
or just what you want out of life in general,
We hope this deep dive has given you some new things to think about.
and maybe even encouraged you to have those honest conversations about what commitment really means to you.
Because when we surround ourselves with people who truly understand and support us, that's when the real magic happens.
And sometimes having those tough conversations can lead to the most amazing breakthroughs.
It's all about building a life that feels authentic and aligned with your values, surrounded by people who lift you up.
I love that. And what's so empowering about all of this is that it reminds us we have a choice.
We don't have to settle for relationships that don't serve us anymore.
We have the power to redefine what commitment looks like for us, to set boundaries, and to walk away from situations that don't align with who we are.
It's about knowing our worth and understanding that we deserve to be in relationships where we feel valued and respected.
And sometimes that means speaking up for ourselves, advocating for our needs, and being willing to walk away if those needs aren't being met.
It takes courage, but it's so worth it in the end.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into cohabitation versus marriage and the bigger picture of commitment in all its forms,
What's the final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
don't be afraid to question the way things have always been done.
Don't be afraid to define commitment on your own terms.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to prioritize those relationships that bring you joy, security, and a sense of belonging.
Because those are the relationships that will truly enrich your life.
It's powerful stuff, right? It's like this whole conversation makes you realize you have choices.
You don't have to just accept things the way they are.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into cohabitation versus marriage and, all these bigger questions about commitment,
What's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
don't be afraid to question the status quo, Don't be afraid to define what commitment means to you.
And don't be afraid to really put those relationships that bring you joy and a sense of belonging first.
Because those are the ones that really matter in the end.
It's all about finding those people who truly get you, who are there for the good times and the bad.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a great conversation.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating look into the questions that make us think.
Until then.